Hello, Brigadiers and Brigadettes. Welcome, Blue Jackets fans and hockey fans alike. I am your captain speaking. Welcome to the podcast, and let's dive into some hockey content. Alrighty, folks, let's see what we're going to talk about today. First off, I just want to mention that this is going to be, it's going to be coming out on Monday, so this is going to be filmed on Saturday, recorded on Saturday. So obviously, you guys know more than I do, because by the time this comes out, you're already going to know the scores, whereas I don't. So, today we're going to talk about Blue Jackets hopefuls that I feel like could really have some offensive resurgence or just an offensive outbreak. Then we're going to talk about the conference finals champs and how they got here. And then we're going to talk about future for the two Stanley Cup champion coaches. And then finally, to wrap it up, I don't know if it's going to be a long segment or a short segment, but we're going to talk about my thoughts on some league news that's come out in the past few days. So, I just wanted to bring this out here and talk about it a little bit. I don't know how much longer I don't know how much longer I'm going to be able to talk about Blue Jackets news in every podcast, just because we're getting at that point of the year where the news can get dry. And I don't really think there's going to be a way for me to give you interesting Blue Jackets content in every podcast. Now, like I've said before in my podcast, I do think once the season starts, we'll definitely be able to talk about the Blue Jackets every single podcast because there's going to be news to talk about. But right now, it's not really at the point where I could probably squeak out one more segment about them as the season winds down, but after that, it's probably not going to be something that's going to happen every single week, and I think it'll be okay. And now let's get into that juicy hockey content. Now, these are some of the Blue Jackets players that I think could either have a resurgence or an outbreak offensively. The first player that we're going to talk about today is number 13 for our Columbus Blue Jackets, Cam Atkinson. Now, Cam had a rough season, probably the worst season in his career, besides his first 2 years. Well, you know what I'm saying. His rookie years where he was kind of gaining that traction, and he wasn't getting a lot of games played. This was probably his worst, since we could say he was a mainstay for the Blue Jackets. He had 12 goals, 14 assists, 26 points, and 44 games played for 0.59 points per game. But I think he's going to bounce back, and I think it's going to be maybe not in a massive way. Here's what I'm projecting. 25 goals, 23 assists for 48 points in 75 games played for 0.64 points per game. Really, we need him to get 25 goals. He's getting paid a lot of money not a lot of money, but a pretty decent chunk of change for a long time. We need him to bounce back. We need him to have a good year. Cam is one of the leaders and mainstays of this team, and he's going to have at least 25 goals from me in order to think that this is something that isn't a concern. The problem is I think his contract's going to be unmovable if he has another down year. Nobody's going to want to offer a trade that would benefit us or them if he's got 5 years left on his deal and he's suddenly not scoring anymore, because that's what he provides, is that scoring ability. It's streaky. There's been a few seasons where he's struggled to score at a rate you would expect. He's had some down years, but the potential is there. He had 41 goals, which tied Rick Nash for the lead all-time in a season for Blue Jackets players. If you're up there with Rick Nash for a scoring record, then you're doing pretty well. Like I said, this past year was a pretty rough year by his standards, and I didn't even feel upset or anything about it. He just kind of got injured, and I think he's going to bounce back. Now, the next player that we're going to talk about is number 18 for our Columbus Blue Jackets, Pierre-Luc Dubois. One of my favorite names to say in the league. It's gravy, baby. I love it. Saying his name is just fun, and there's a good reason, because he's a good player. So, this past season, he had 18 goals for 31 assists in 70 games played. He had 49 points. Sorry, got a little bit in a little bit of a rut there. So he averaged 0.7 points per game this season. Really good. I really couldn't complain about it. He would have hit that 20-goal mark if we would have played all the games. I don't really have anything to knock on Pierre-Luc. He doesn't really miss time. He provides that offense. I think that he's going to kind of figure out the defensive side as well in order to be, I'm not going to say a defensive juggernaut, but I think he's going to be a slightly above average defensive player, if not overall a very good defensive player. But anyway, I think this year is a year that he hit 70 points. I don't think it's that wild to say that he should hit 70 points. He was a 3rd overall pick, and I think he's going to pop off this year. 30 goals, 40 assists for 70 points in 80 games played, 0.88 points per game. I think that 70 goals will probably be towards the higher end of where he goes in his career, but I will say I think he should be getting 70 points every year over his prime, besides injuries. But it looks like he's a workhorse, he's a dog that'll just keep on going. So I think this is a year that he breaks through and gets that 70-point marker. Maybe 75, we'll see. And then finally, Emil Bemstrom, number 52 for our Jackets. Last year he had 10 goals, 10 assists for 20 points in 56 games played for 0.36 points per game. Now, I'm not exactly sure what the playing time's going to be, what line he's going to be on. Probably 3rd would be my guess. So this year I think he's going to have 15 goals for 4 and 20 assists for 35 points in 75 games played for 0.47 points per game. That's not a lot. That's not, I don't think anything unreasonable. He's going to get the opportunities as long as he doesn't get towards doghouse. If you go there, you're not really going to be doing yourself any favors. But I do think that he will be able to hit 15 goals realistically and 20 assists. And as long as he gets adequate playing time, I think that should be relatively easy to hit that. I don't think he's going to go too much higher, but in his 2nd year in the league, I think that we're going to see some good things. So that was my take on these 3 players. And there's probably more. Bjorkstrand, I think, really could have a good year next year. Foligno, I think he could have a resurgence. But these 3 guys, I really do feel like they could either, in Cam's case, a resurgence, or these other 2 guys, a breakthrough. Emil, I wouldn't really call it a breakthrough just because, he was a rookie last year, so there's nothing much to say. But I think for Pierre-Luc, there will be a breakthrough. He will get to 70 points. But with that being said, this is over for this topic, and we're going to move on into the conference finals champs and how they got here. So now let's move into talking about the conference champs and how they got here. And I don't know if I've ever shared this fun fact, but if I haven't, I'm going to share it now, and if I have, I apologize for saying it again. So, when I was just about to be born, my mom and dad were trying to figure out what to name me, and my dad was a really big Devils fan, so this connects to the Stars. So I was born in 2000, that year that the Stars played the Devils. And my dad wanted to name me Martin for Martin Brodeur. So just a little fun fact in my relation to hockey. My dad's not too big into hockey anymore now. He was a big Marty Brodeur fan, so I think when he retired, the love just kind of died for the game. But Stars fans, you can see there's a little bit of a connection, and I don't want to bring that up where you guys lost in 2000, but just a little connection there. And hopefully within 20 years, you guys have healed from that pain. But anyway, like I said, let's move into talking about the champs for each conference and how they got here. So, your Western Conference champs are the Dallas Stars. Congrats, Dallas. I said in the last podcast, I thought that they'd lose to Vegas. They didn't. They won in overtime, and they played not an awful game. They played an okay game. But guess what? They came out. They won. I'm glad. Like we said in the last podcast, I wanted Dallas to win, and they won. So congrats to Dallas. And I posted on my Instagram, congrats to all the Stars fans, party hard. Hudobin is a monster, and his accent is so fun to listen to. I think that we should require all the other Stars players to not be able to talk and listen to that thick Russian accent 24/7 in the interviews. So anyway, let's move into how you guys got here. So, the Dallas Stars had a record of 37, 24, and 8 on the season, and they had 82 points on the year. they weren't exactly a dominant team. They were a team that, they were going to get to the playoffs, and you expected it to be, I would say, probably a shorter run. I didn't expect them to go very far. They finished third in the division. They finished behind St. Louis, who was on an absolute tear. They finished first with 94 points, and then they finished and then Colorado finished second with 92 points. Those two teams were really fun to watch this year. I wasn't really sure who was going to take that division. I'm going to say that Colorado might have taken it at the end of the year, and we'll never know. We won't, but hey, it was a great regular season, but they couldn't catch up to St. Louis in time, and then Dallas is the last man standing in the Central, so that's cool. So the goals for this season were 2.61 goals per game. They finished with 180 goals on the year, which was 28th in the league. And then the goals against were 2.57 goals per game, which was second in the league, and they gave up 177 on the year. So right around, they were just an average team overall, but we could see that offensively they were struggling. Defensively, they were just a juggernaut. So now we're going to move on into the playoffs and see what they did here. So their goals for in the playoffs so far through the first 3 rounds. I'm not counting the round robin. I'm sorry, I can't. That's stupid. So for the goals for in the playoffs so far, they've scored 58 goals, which amounts to 3.22 goals per game. So their offense is just almost added, a whole other goal per game. I know it's not exactly that, but, to go from 2.61 to 3.22, that's huge. And this could be the difference in how they get to winning the cup. Their goals against in the playoffs is 54. They're allowing 3 goals per game. I didn't expect that. I think the reason that it happened really was the Colorado series. They were eaten alive in that series, and Colorado actually outscored them. So, overall, they're right about where they were in terms of their goal differential. It was a +3 in the regular season, and then a +4 in the playoffs. So now we're going to talk about the first round, where they beat Calgary 4-2. The series goals were 21-17 in Dallas's favor. And, seems about right. They had 21 goals, obviously, as we discussed. They scored 3.5 goals per game. That is crazy. For a team that was struggling so much offensively, they just lit it up. Not every game, obviously, but there were some games where they just feasted. And it was pretty interesting to watch. And then their goals against, obviously, as we discussed before, was 17. So 2.83 goals per game. I felt like they limited Calgary pretty well over the course of the series. There were some times where Calgary obviously scored above that. I think that Dallas won 5-4 in an overtime game against Calgary, so they went above that average. And I think one thing that was notable about the series was Game 6. I was laying in bed with my wife, and I had my laptop pulled up, and I stopped watching the game, and she said, isn't hockey on tonight? Why aren't you watching the game? And I said it was already 3-0 Calgary in the first when I turned it off. I know Dallas scored another one in the first after I turned it off. And I said, this game's probably over, so I'm not going to waste my time watching this game when it's probably going to be a blowout. I wake up the next day to see that Dallas has won 7-3. They scored 7 unanswered goals, 5 of those coming in the second. It was crazy. I wish I probably would have watched the game, just the second period at least, because who scores 5 goals in a period? That's wild. And then, they move on. They beat Colorado in the second round. That's who they have to play. I thought Colorado was really going to win that series. I thought we were going to see Vegas, Colorado. It would have been a cool matchup, but I'm totally fine that Dallas won it. The series goals were 29-28 in Colorado's favor. As we can see, it was a very high scoring series. Dallas had 28 goals for, which was 4 goals per game on average. That's crazy. If you get 4 goals per game in a series, that's insane. But on the flip side of that, they gave up 29 goals, and that was 4.14 goals per game on the series. So defensively, there was a big lapse. And I think it comes down to Colorado is definitely one of the better offensive teams in the league. And It was concerning for sure, but you know what? They made it through. They won Game 7. I really thought they were going to lose it. When they lost Game 5 and 6, I thought Colorado's got this in the bag. But hey, normally where Dallas would have folded, they, fought back and they won. That's the thing that I love about this Dallas team this year is every time it looks like that they should fold or the old them would have folded, they just come right back and they punch them right in the mouth. Whoever they're going to play, they just make sure that they lose and Dallas wins. It's really cool. And I think that a notable from that series was in Game 2, Dallas scored 4 goals in the second period. They just score in bunches, man. I don't know what to say. And it's one of those things where you don't really expect it to be a consistent thing, but Dallas has done it. They've scored consistently in the playoffs over, just a period. They'll score a chunk of goals. So they won that game, or that series in 7 games. That was really awesome to see. So they go on to the conference finals, and they beat Vegas 4-1. I didn't expect that. I don't think a lot of people did. This was unexpected, and if you called it, you're probably a Dallas fan, or you're a liar. And it was really, really awesome. Like I said, I predicted Vegas to win, and I got some heat from Stars fans. Guess what? Like I said before, I wanted the Stars to win. It was awesome. Loved it. So this was a totally different series from Vegas, for the Vegas series compared to the Colorado series. The series goals were 9-8 in Dallas's favor. Very low scoring series. So they only scored 9 goals in 5 games. That's 1.8 goals per game. That is low. But they limited Vegas to 8 goals in 5 games. That's 1.6 goals per game. They really put the clamps down on Vegas when it came to just scoring. I mean, they had the high danger chances, but at the end of the day, Hudobin, I'm not necessarily going to say the team, they did block shots. There were some shot blocks in that series that were pretty impressive, and it showed a lot of heart. Dallas has got that heart. And at the end of the day, Hudobin just was an animal and decided that he was going to put this team on his back and carry them all the way to the Stanley Cup Finals. And who knows? He might end up taking them and winning the cup. But the notables in this series that I thought were wild was the fact that Dallas was outshot 161-118 in the series and won. They were also down 2-0 in Game 5, and they ended up winning in OT. This is a team that normally I think would have folded, and here they are. They're the Western Conference champions for the first time in 20 years. It's awesome. Their playoff record is 12-6. And they're looking to be, at the end of the day, they could be 16-9 and be Stanley Cup champions. Dallas doesn't care how many games it takes. They can be 16-9. That's fine. As long as they just win those 4 games, they're happy with it. So, we talked about Dallas. Now let's talk about Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay is your Eastern Conference champions. I'm not very excited about that. I don't like Tampa Bay. It's nothing against the fans or the team. I just think that their success over the past 10 years has gotten to be pretty old. But they're the Eastern Conference champions for the second time in the past 10 years. They've won 3 Eastern Conference titles since 2004. Obviously 2004 with Tortorella, 2015 with John Cooper, and then 2020 with John Cooper. So that's their second Eastern Conference title in 6 years. They know a thing or two about being in big games. The question is, are they going to win the big moments this year in the Stanley Cup Finals? Because they did win a big game by beating the Islanders in Game 6 in overtime. So let's talk about just how they got here. So their record for the season was 43-21-6. They finished with 92 points. And I know it sounds wild, but I really thought they were going to catch up to Boston. I felt it in my soul. I thought they were going to go on a tear, and I thought they were going to end up winning the President's Trophy. So they finished second in the division, 8 points behind Boston, who had 100 points on the year, and ended up winning the President's Trophy. I really did believe that they were going to catch up to them. I didn't have a lot of faith in Boston this year. I think that maybe next year's the last hoorah for them. I don't even know if next year will be the last year they can really make a run. I think they're going to have to make some big trades in order to get deep in the playoffs. And if they really want to win the cup, I think they're going to have to do something crazy that could hurt them in the long run. But at this point, I think they should try to go for it. And even if it hurts them in the long run, this team is too talented to only have one championship since 2011. It's too good to finish off this way. But anyway, back to Tampa Bay. So Tampa Bay had 245 goals for on the regular season. They scored 3.5 goals per game, which was first in the league. Their offense was amazing. It was great. Loved it. They were a fun team to watch offensively. Their goals against, they gave up 195 goals for 2.79 goals per game. Pretty good defense. It was top 10. Finished 9th on the year. And, they're kind of continuing that trend now where they're a great offensive team and a great defensive team. So in the playoffs, they've given up 34 goals while they've scored 52. So they've scored 3.25 goals per game. It's dipped off a little bit in the playoffs. But I think a lot of that comes down to playing great teams defensively that are the Blue Jackets and the Islanders. And then they have just been amazing defensively. They've given up 2.13 goals per game in the playoffs. And again, we're not talking about round robin because I don't want to. I just don't. I want to talk about the actual playoffs. And they've just put down the clamps. So in the first round, they beat Columbus 4-1. The series goals was 13-12 in Tampa's favor. It was a close series the whole way. Obviously, Tampa scored 13 goals in 5 games for 2.6 goals per game, while allowing 12 in 5 games for 2.4 goals per game against the Blue Jackets. The notable for this series in the first round was that every game was a 1-goal game except when Columbus won 3-1 in Game 2. And, it was a close series the whole way. I knew Tampa was probably going to win it just because they had enough offense to win it in overtime. And that's what happened, They had a lot of close games that Tampa just had a little bit more offensive punch. So, now we're going to move into the second round where they beat Boston 4-1. Tampa Bay is a bad matchup for Boston. And at this point, I think if Boston really wants to win a cup, they need to make the moves necessary in order to beat Tampa Bay. Boston's not going to make it to the Stanley Cup next year if they can't get through Tampa Bay because Tampa Bay is going to be there meeting them probably in the second round again. So the series goals for this was pretty bad. It was 19-10 in favor of Tampa. Tampa scored 19 goals in 5 games. That's 3.8 goals per game. Boston scored 10 goals in 5 games. And I don't know what to say about this except the fact that they were limited to 2 goals per game. The notable for this series was that Yaroslav Halak had a .896 save percentage in this series. Tampa Bay just feasted when it was a famine for the Bruins. And I don't know what the Bruins are going to do at this point. You're relying on an older crew to try to take on this team. Pastrnak had a great series, I feel like, offensively. Marchand had a good series. Bergeron really didn't have a lot of offensive value in terms of points. And again, the Bruins are going to have to make moves to get past Tampa Bay this next year. Otherwise, this is the end for the Bruins. The line is drawn, and this is the end of an era. But moving on into the conference finals, the Lightning beat the Islanders 4-2. The series goals are skewed because of Game 1. It's 20-12 in favor of the Lightning. And again, the goals for Tampa were 20 goals in 6 games, 3.33 goals per game. Another frog in my throat this week. I don't know what it is. My throat's been sore. I had to do a radio skit for my radio class, and ever since then, it's just been bad. But anyway, back to the series. So the Islanders could not hold the Lightning back from scoring, especially Game 1. But their offense really couldn't get going either. They scored 12 goals in 6 games for 2 goals per game. And I think the notable thing for this was that after Game 1, the series goals were 12-10 in favor of Tampa. So after that first game where it was 8-2 Tampa, it really did level out. And their playoff record is 12-4, and they look like a machine ready to steamroll whoever they play. I don't know if Dallas will be able to handle them, but we'll see. I mean, Game 1's literally in 30 minutes, and I think that Game 1's going to be really big in showing what this series is going to look like. I don't know if Stamkos is coming back. Point looks hurt. This is going to be huge. If Dallas, as awful as it sounds, can get Point out of the series and Stamkos can't come back, I could totally see Dallas taking this series, and I could see them winning it with some luck. But This was the overlook for these two teams, the Western and Eastern Conference champs. Now we're going to move into the future of these two Stanley Cup coaches and what the future really could hold for these two guys. And now we're going to talk about the future for these two Stanley Cup coaches. So for the Western Conference champions Dallas Stars, their coach is Rick Bowness. And the road for him is a totally different road compared to John Cooper, the coach of the Tampa Bay Lightning. Rick Bowness has coached 6 different teams. He's 65. So I guess what does this mean for him if he wins the Stanley Cup? I think it would just be huge in general of the fact that he's probably going to get an offer to be the Dallas Stars coach permanently. He's no longer going to be the interim guy. And I think it would be huge not only for him but for the team and the city because they won't be viewed as the 3 team, I guess, in Dallas. I think the Mavericks and them would be more tied for second. But the thing is, it's interesting is, it doesn't seem like Rick Bowness wants to be the head coach. It seems like he kind of likes to hang back and be the assistant coach. He's a little bit older, so maybe he doesn't want that responsibility. And I don't know if he's going to be the head coach, if I'm being honest. I would love to see him be the head coach after the run that he's been on and kind of the bad luck he's had when he's coached in the league. He took over the expansion Ottawa Senators, and then he coached the New York Islanders when they were going through a rebuild. He really hasn't had a lot of opportunities that have been good, so I'm hoping maybe if it's like a mental thing where he doesn't want to have to, I guess, worry about being a failure, I hope that he works through that, and if he does want to be a head coach really, then he's given that opportunity. So what does it mean if they win the Cup? Like I said, he'll get to be the full-time head coach, and this will probably buy him 4 years. If, they even have a few bad seasons after this, he'll be the man in Dallas. He'll be, safe. He won't have to worry about losing his job. He'll be set for 4 years. Now, what does it mean for him if he loses the Cup? Nothing. It really doesn't mean anything at all. Dallas wasn't expected to go this far, and here they are in Game 1 of the Stanley Cup Finals. Might I add that they are looking really good with those Stanley Cup Final patches on their jerseys. At the end of the day, Rick Bowness has taken this team farther than anybody expected, and if they lose, no big deal. He'll still get the offer to be the head coach. Maybe that gives him 3 years of job security, even if they don't play well. So, it really just buys him or loses him an extra year. It really doesn't matter. Now, moving over into the Eastern Conference champion team, the Tampa Bay Lightning, this is where it gets totally different. John Cooper. John Cooper has only coached one team throughout his coaching career, professionally at the NHL level. That team is the Tampa Bay Lightning, as we all know. The difference between these two coaches is age. Obviously, Rick Bowness is 65, whereas John Cooper is 53. That's 13 years. That's a big difference. 65 is considered the age for retirement. So John Cooper realistically could be the coach for the Lightning a lot longer. What exactly does this mean for him if they win the Stanley Cup? If the Lightning win the Stanley Cup, this is so big. I don't even think people understand how big this is for him. He will be given job security for the next 4 years, guaranteed. John Cooper obviously has been a very good winning head coach at his time with Tampa Bay. If he wins this, they've got 4 years of job security. He doesn't have to keep looking over his shoulder. And I think it'd be huge for him because he could really get those roots a little bit deeper in Tampa Bay. I think that him winning the Cup would just be beneficial not only for him, but for his family as well, to know that they don't really have to worry about being fired and then, where they're going to go from here. So it's a big, big difference for John Cooper because he obviously likes being the head coach, and I think he definitely wants to stay in Tampa. But what does this mean exactly for him if they lose the series? There's 2 different ways that this could go. If they lose the series in a competitive fashion, say 6 games, 7 games, then he's safe. This Eastern Conference title probably buys him another 2 years at least. So, unless they get off to a really, really bad start. So if it's a competitive thing, then I think that'll buy him 2 years. But he's still going to have that monkey on his back because he has to worry about a bad start or a bad stretch. So if they lose this series in a close fashion, like I said, 2 years, he's going to be a little bit safer than what you'd expect. But, it's going to be one of those things where he still has to look over his shoulder. But this is where I really think that this may be an unpopular opinion, but let's say they lose in 4 or 5 games and they're just kind of blowouts or bad games. I think he gets fired. And not a lot of people would think that's the right decision to fire the head coach that's been so successful since his first year coaching the team. But at the end of the day, if they get beat in 4 to 5 games, this is a super talented team that just got beat by a team that's really not supposed to be here. And it's embarrassing. So I think it's one of those things that if they lose in 4 to 5 games and it's not pretty, he will get fired. And I don't know. Obviously, he'll get more opportunities, but from what it seems like, he seems to really like Tampa Bay. So I hope for John Cooper's sake. I really don't like him just because I'm not a big fan of the Lightning, but I think he's probably a good guy. I do hope that at the very least it's a competitive series because nobody wants the Stanley Cup Finals to be a sweep or a 5-game series unless you're the fan for the team that won. But I hope it's a good series, and I hope both of these coaches get to have some more job security because I do think that, they're both good coaches, and I think they're both good motivators. One thing that I wanted to touch up on was the fact that the Tampa Bay Lightning touched the Prince of Wales trophy after they won. I don't like it, but I get it, just because they lost in 2015 and they didn't touch it. Might as well just try to, buck the trend. And it's one of those things that it's a superstition in hockey, but I like the superstition. But again, they lost in 2015 and they didn't touch it, so why wouldn't you try to go the other way with it? Dallas didn't touch the Campbell, the Western Conference trophy, and hey, let's see what happens. I would really like to see the superstition be held accountable and true, and I'd love to see Dallas win it. And overall, I just want Dallas to win the series. But anyway, that's my 2 takes on what happens to the future or for the future of these 2 Stanley Cup coaches. Now we're going to move on into my thoughts on some league news that's happened just in the past day or 2. So we're going to finish this up and we're going to talk about some news for just going around the league the past day or 2. And, we'll try to make this short because I think we're right about that time where we're going to cut it off. But Ottawa changed their logo yesterday, and I don't know how I feel about it. Their jerseys looked great back in the day when they were that black jersey, but it kind of looks like Beavis and Butthead, like a character from that show decided to throw on the helmet and say, hey, take my picture. So, it's one of those things that maybe it'll grow on me. I liked the old Senator logo. I say old as in, as if it wasn't just a few days ago that was the primary logo. It looked better. I think maybe the Sens could have modernized the logo and ran with it a little bit more. But the copy your homework meme, it literally looks like that. They changed just a few minute things. But hey, Senators fans for the most part seem to be excited, so I'm really happy for them. So hey, Senators fans, again, enjoy it. I don't think it's really going to change much. But let's be real, the rebuild's probably a year or 2 away from being done. I know this is kind of a mental thing where it's, getting excited about the future of this team. So, good luck. Another thing I want to talk about is this isn't necessarily news. This is my take. Vegas has said before that they want to go all in to win the cup. And I don't really know how true that is because at the end of the day, there are just probably 2 or 3 more years at most where they really have a good window to win this thing. And my take is they really do need to want to make a big move in order to win a cup if they're serious about it, because there's some things to worry about. The teams that they need to worry about now are Tampa Bay, Boston, and Colorado. These are teams that really should look out for and try to make sure that they're better than in order to win this cup within the next few years. And the thing is, they need to be serious about it because now we're going to talk about teams that are, problems currently that'll probably be a bigger issue in the future. The Rangers, Hurricanes, and Jets, I think that they're going to be a bigger issue within the next year or 2. So those are teams that have a pretty bright future, especially the Rangers and the Hurricanes. And those are 2 teams that I think will win a cup. I don't know about the Hurricanes so much. Well, I don't know really about either one, but I feel pretty good about their chances. And then the far out teams that Vegas really needs to worry about. Don't laugh at me when I say this. Obviously, they're in their rebuilds. But understand that in a few years, if they do the right things, they're going to be contenders. As wild as it sounds, yeah. In a few years, they're going to be contenders. Get ready for that. and that is the far-out teams of Ottawa, Detroit, and Los Angeles. So Vegas really needs to worry about these, these 10 teams, 9-10 teams. They really need to make a move now if they're actually serious about winning a cup within the next, 2 to 3 years. They need to, as awful as it sounds, maybe risk the farm system. I guess you could say risk these prospects in order to make a move at that cup, because there's just a lot of teams to worry about in the future. And, if you're going to go in, actually do it. Don't just say you're going to go in. Put all the chips and, push them forward in the table. And then finally, I feel like the biggest news that we could talk about is Alex Pietrangelo. The St. Louis Blues told him to, look to the market, talk to other teams because their conversation was done, which means that at the end of the day that he's probably gone. And these days with St. Louis are over. And these teams that I think should really make a push if they're all in are Winnipeg, Toronto, Edmonton, and Vegas to try to get him. As crazy as it sounds, I don't know how they'd make the cap work. Winnipeg, they have got a pretty good core. I think they should make at least an offer for him. Toronto, you're already so far in the hole. Find a way to make it work, because if not, this drought is just going to keep going and going. Find a way. Edmonton, find a way to make Connor McDavid stay. If you got Pietrangelo, that would at least show him you're trying. And I don't know again how they'd make the cap work, but hey, make a move. Go for it. I think it'd be wild to see him in any of these teams' jerseys, but they would definitely make them cup favorites, I feel like, or contenders at the very least. And then finally, like we talked about just a second ago, Vegas. Vegas should go all in anyway. They've already wasted a lot of these prospects by giving them away. We don't really know what their future prospects aren't looking exactly ideal, I guess you could say. Might as well go in for broke and just, like I said before, go all in, make that dive. They should try to get Pietrangelo, and I think that would get them the cup they need, even though the contract would probably look bad in a few years, and I know that they've got some cap issues now. They might as well just go for it because they already have. So these are my takes on these, this news around the league. And again, the Alex Pietrangelo news really is just a dive and a reach, but these 4 teams, they don't have much to lose, especially Toronto and Vegas. Go all in. You're already desperate. You're backed into a corner. I don't even know which team would be backed in more of a corner. Probably Toronto, just because the media there is ruthless. But hey, that's my thoughts on the league news around this week. Anyway, everybody have a great week. Stay safe from COVID. Enjoy some great Stanley Cup Finals hockey. And just in general, live your life. Goodbye, Brigadiers and Brigadettes, and hockey fans in general. This is your captain signing off. Have a great week.